Welcome to Choose the Nickel. I am your host, George Bailey. My co-founder and technical support is the ever-talented, ever-beautiful Christina Bailey. This podcast is about giving kids financial freedom. My wife and I love our 4 children and want to learn to prepare them more effectively for the adult world. So we're interviewing fascinating people for their insights about how children learn to be financially savvy. Our guests come from diverse, sometimes conflicting schools of thought, and we love the opportunity to learn from them. We encourage listeners everywhere to weigh our guests' ideas on how best to cultivate in children a healthy relationship with money. We invite you to visit our blog at www.choosethenickel.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our efforts to apply what we are learning on the podcast. Our next episode features Ken Coleman, co-founder and CEO of marketing for Gorilla Signs, maker of the world's first fully collapsible portable mini billboards. With his ability to think outside the box, Ken has given new meaning to the term guerrilla marketing. His true passion is inspiring businesses to take control of how to tell their story, which is the topic of 2 books he will soon be releasing. Previous to founding Gorilla Signs, Ken was a real estate broker for 37 years, 33 of which he spent running his own real estate company. He has sold over 6,000 homes, amounting to approximately $1.5 billion in sales. Ken has lived in Southwest Missouri for over 50 years. He has raised 6 children who are all finished with college. He is fun, kind, and has terrific stories about the value of work. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Coleman. Ken Coleman, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I feel humbled to be here. I really appreciate it.
You're one of the most successful realtors in the entire state of Missouri and one of the most successful new home construction realtors in the United States.
I was very blessed to do well in the real estate industry, but I knew at a young age I wanted to be a real estate agent. 12 years old, I actually knew I wanted to be.
12 years old.
I mean, who does that, right?
No, yeah. What 12-year-old knows that?
Well, I had a unique situation. My uncle was the number 1 realtor in the state of Kansas. I grew up with him. And
Got it.
At 12 years old, he died in an accidental plane crash that I was on the plane with him prior to taking off. My mother
sad.
took me off the plane. And so I think probably that more than anything else encouraged me to go on into that. I felt like it was my destiny to go into the real estate industry. And
wow.
Lost him way too early in life, but he had a major impact onto just one of those very accomplished individuals. Played the organ. He played 5 different instruments. He had a law degree. He had a pastoral degree. He was a real estate broker and a contractor. Just one of those guys that everybody in town liked. And he was the first one to sell $1 million worth of real estate in like a 5-state area back in the 60s.
Wow.
And
give me some perspective on that. Like in the 1960s, what would a home sell for? And
you're probably looking around $15,000 for a fairly high-end home. I mean, homes were somewhere in between 10 to 15,000. So,
oh man.
If
that were the case today, I'd be buying it up like mad.
Crazy?
Yeah, that's totally
but
crazy.
You know what's funny about that? That is the case today. We just don't see that perspective. Isn't that funny?
It's true. It's the inflation and, yeah.
It's just hard to see it that way. So that's the real estate agent coming out on me. I don't see real estate anymore, so.
But it's fascinating. I take it you had a really close relationship with your uncle. Did he ever take you out to look at the property that he was working with or anything like that?
He did. In fact, one day he took me out to a property. In fact, 2 days prior to him passing away, we went to an open house, and he opened the trunk of his Cadillac and to do this open house, and was pulling a sign out of the trunk of his car and had a blanket wrapped around it 3 times. And I asked him, Uncle Ray, why do you have a blanket wrapped around your sign? And he looked at me and he looked me right in the eyes. It was one of those moments where you never forget, partly because he passed away 2 days later and you relive all that. But the other reason was he looked me right in the eyes and he said, someday somebody's going to reinvent this silly sign, Ken. They're going to build a sign that is collapsible and portable and goes in the trunk of your car. And he said it won't be a pain like this sign.
That's really, really fascinating. That I didn't realize that your Gorilla Signs concept had been, I guess, the seeds had been planted so young.
Yeah, I think, sometimes that trauma that happens in our lives at an early age can affect us negative or positive. In my particular case, I chose to see that glass half full, and I pursued life with a vengeance to literally to do something with my life that he would have been proud of. So the signs was something that came from him. Real estate was something that came from him. And a lot of my life has been patterned based on, and I think that's often for people, the influences they have in their life.
What was it about your uncle outside of his practice in real estate that really attracted you, that made you want to take after him?
Well, not only a very accomplished individual, but I remember one day I went to go get my hair cut with him. He overheard a conversation at the chair next to him. An individual came in, a young man, and he had 3 children, and he had just lost his job. And he was pretty optimistic about it. It was simply he got laid off. And my uncle, being the kind of man he was, and I didn't really understand that at the time too well, but he went back to his real estate office. I was with him, as often was the case, and he immediately got the newspaper out and started reading the help wanted section. And he started making phone calls. And by the 3rd phone call, he had figured out a job for this guy and got the guy another job. But that was just my uncle. And, there was nothing in it for him. It's just his nature. It really taught me, though, the basic principles and understanding that we're never in business to be in business. We're in business as a people business. And that's the best way. And so that's how I built my career in real estate, was through that example.
That makes me think of a lot of, before I went into the financial services industry and attended law school, I was a foreign language teacher, and I had teachers who were very influential for me, who took the time. I knew, whatever you're getting paid, it's not paying for this.
Yeah, exactly.
That type of a mentality is very powerful.
In the teaching world, I think it's the epitome of a teacher. I really think that's a prerequisite, isn't it? To be a teacher is to go above and beyond pay. And it isn't about the money. It's about the service that you can give back to society.
Do you have any teachers that, when you were young, impacted you?
Yeah, I did have, of course. Probably the largest one was in 4th grade. She just saw me for who I was. That's how I felt. I was dyslexic growing up. And so I had an extreme difficulty.
You weren't the only one. Myself, I don't think I was dyslexic, but I had ADD,
Okay, then you can realize. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Has certain elements in there, shared elements.
Yeah, so she recognized that, even though there wasn't a real knowledgeable title for it at the time. She recognized that. She did well with that. She realized I was a visual learner. So she took the extra time to dissect out the visual learners in the class, the ones that had that form of dyslexia. And I think she just naturally knew. She was very in tune to those kids, and she actually taught us almost like a foreign language. She taught us more through visual. Isn't that neat?
Yeah, very much so.
Classes today still don't do that. But.
So when you think about that and having discovered your learning style early on, do you think that helped you much later on? And do you think that you carry that with you still as you continue building this new business you've got, as you went about doing real estate? How much do you think that impacted you?
Well, I don't think I really understood at the time. She did, but I didn't. I look back now, I realized she did. It wasn't until almost 9th grade before I really understood why I had a learning disability. And I suffered with my grades through school. Teachers, it would really frustrate them because they said, well, Ken, you're an extremely intelligent individual. And both my brothers were straight A students and older brothers. And yet I just could not seem to learn at the pace that everybody else was learning. So I didn't discover it till 9th grade. And it did have an impact already on my life. Not in a positive way. I felt insecure about it.
Do you think that there are a lot of kids still that go through this same thing where, they're just waiting for someone to uncover those talents?
Absolutely. My heart goes out to parents who have a child like that and to the child themselves. And I think that it comes in many different forms. But I think that as teachers and as society, we need to be very in tune to those people around us who have disabilities, because sometimes that individual is the last one to understand and know what their disabilities are. I mean, they were born with them, and to them,
it's normal. That's like, this is baseline. This is the paradigm through which they see the world.
What a blessing that is.
Yeah. Oh, for all of us. I think of all of the great thinkers who were just very different in the way that they saw the world and how we all benefited from them. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about your current business. You went from real estate into creating a new type of sign. Tell me a little bit about that. I've seen this thing. It's pretty fascinating.
A real turning point in my life, 37-year career I did in real estate. I woke up one day and it wasn't that I didn't still enjoy real estate, but I went through the 2008-2009 financial tsunami the real estate industry went through, and real estate was no exception to that rule. And I specialized in new home construction. About 93% of all the properties I had listed at the time were all new homes. Well, new homes were the first thing that suffered from the financial tsunami. You could not get financing for them. So it just kind of destroyed my career at the time, and I was going to have to reinvent myself. I'd lived through the Jimmy Carter years, and I'd gone through those cycles, and I just thought, kids are raised, they're through college, I don't really have to do this. So I reevaluated my life, and I actually prayed on it and said for days and days and days about what could I do to best serve. And what came to me was how novel of an idea it was to ask for that, because I got the answer. And the answer was to use my God-given talents to go out and actually help other people. And what I found that was for me was helping other people to live out their dreams as 5%ers, I call them, and pursue their God-given talents as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. One of the things I've often thought about, because I remember when I was a teacher, I was getting paid for the work I was doing, but I always perceived it to be service. And that I think that for maybe an outsider looking in, that might strike them as a little bit peculiar. There's service, and then there's the things that you do for money. Yeah. Which way do you see it? Where do you sit on that?
Well, I think it's all about service. I think that thing we finally learn later in life if we're lucky enough to learn it. You know, I lived in an area that most everybody I sold was retirees. So the average age was 65 years old.
Yeah.
And I sold 6,000 homes to people that were about 65 years old. So I got to look through a magnifying glass, huge, at that last generation of people's lives and see what they wish they had done or what they were glad they did. This was the subject that I saw that came up over and over again. Was some discovered that towards the end, the real secret to life for them was never about them. Yeah. It was always about someone else.
I feel like if you're going to make money, do so in a manner that allows it to be very fulfilling. So you're concurrently making money and you're providing a social good.
Yeah, I think that is the intent. We're pursuing our passion. I think it's the key word. If you wake up in the morning and your feet hit the floor and you say, gosh, I'm really looking forward to doing what I'm doing today, I believe you're always in the people business. No matter what business you're in, you're always in the people business. So if you have a passion for what you do, the people around you know that you're living life with passion, and they're drawn to you for that reason. It doesn't matter what it is that you do. It could be teacher, it could be attorney, it could be a doctor, it can be a real estate agent, it could be a ditch digger. It doesn't really matter.
I'm trying to think of somebody who cuts against your grain. I'm trying. What's that profession? I'm trying to think about that.
That's a segue into something that after I decided not to pursue real estate anymore, I decided to write 2 books, and both of those are about to be published. And then also the signs. You asked me that question. The signs was an invention that I had in my head from that time that my uncle pulled the sign out of the back of his car and said somebody's going to reinvent them someday. Yeah. Well, that was God speaking to me later in life saying, guess who that person is? I realized I didn't have that ability to actually, that was not a gene I got, was an inventor. But pursuit of entrepreneurship, yes. I actually prayed and found my business partner that I have today, which is Russell Smith. He's an engineer. He actually invented the sign that I market and sell today, so we have a partnership.
Well, this brings me to an important question. You know, we feel like in order for me to be successful at this and that professionally, I have to be the one to do it.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it was intended at all. I think that we're supposed to include ourselves with other people. I think life's kind of like a puzzle that we're given the gift early in life as to the perimeter of the puzzle. That's our family. That's what we inherit. And that's the easy pieces to put together. It's the straight pieces. It's the inside of the puzzle that's more difficult to do. I spent the early part of my life trying to put that puzzle together based on what I thought I was supposed to do, not what I thought God wanted me to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it does make a lot of sense. And what I'm impressed about is that when you went into business, you brought along Russell, you saw his strengths and you thought, okay, I've got the vision, he's got the know-how.
Yes.
But how critical have you found it, not just in this particular, work that you do, but even in real estate, how critical is it that you lean on other people's strengths?
Well, I think it's everything. I think that you have to learn to do that. It's real easy to have a tendency, the more talented you are, or maybe the more healthy your upbringing was or unhealthy it was, either way, that many people have this tendency to put up this wall of protection around them, and their ego goes along with that. They have a tendency to block those people out around them that can be a major help to them. You need those people to be successful. Whatever your definition of success is, I think it always includes other people, because we're not all born with all the God-given talents. We're only born with a few. And so if we can collectively surround ourselves with other people that want to help us. And here's my philosophy. People don't want to help you unless you want to help them.
Tell me more.
I think that by the nature of how we function as human beings, from the time that we're a child, I think that that's something that some discover more than others. And that comes from that watching those 65-year-old people buy houses. And I saw the differences in people who were living a happy life and those who were not happy at the end. There was this huge number of people that were bitter and angry at life that somehow they got cheated. And then there was also this another large group that's like, oh my gosh, every day, I can't wait, for the next day. Interestingly enough, most
they get out of bed just screaming, yeah!
Oh, yeah. You can hear them from a block away, screaming. And I thought, I want to be that guy, that gal. I want to be that person. So I did my own interviews over the years, and I found that they were givers. They weren't takers.
Who were these people you were interviewing?
They were people from all walks of life from all over the United States. There was a melting pot. Of course, one of the things that I really valued about Branson, Missouri, give it a little sales pitch about Branson. Branson is
come to Branson.
Yeah.
So
well, there's two.
I'll put a link there in the notes. Okay, it's like everybody in Branson's gonna be like, yay.
Yeah. Well, a couple things about Branson I was always very proud of. One is there's over 100 music shows there, and none of them have any profanity or anything that you wouldn't take your children to. And we all know that's
so. It's a family friendly vacation spot. Gotcha.
Without a doubt. The other crime is low there, and the other thing about the Missouri area, the southwest Missouri, that Branson area is about 1 in every 3 males in the area are former military.
Wow.
It has the highest concentration of military.
Say that stat again?
It's the highest per capita numbers of retired service people in the United States.
Wow.
Has 6 events yearly in Branson, Missouri held for veterans and honor veterans. Branson was the first place in the United States that actually honored the welcoming home of Vietnam veterans. Actually, I was the chairman of the board that started the organization called the Veterans Task Force in Branson, Missouri. And we did the very first welcome home event for Vietnam vets.
Exciting. So now you are going out and you're getting people to use this. Give me just a very quick description of what your signs do and what makes them so special.
These are the world's first fully collapsible portable mini billboards. Say that 3 times real fast.
I can't.
Yeah. Well,
I give up. I was going to try. I really would.
It took me a while to learn that. I kept adding words to it. But it's a first. And so the reality is that the small to medium sign business last year in the United States and banners was a $20 billion industry. So obviously there's a demand for that. It is arguably one of the most effective marketing tools on the face of the earth for a small business owner. And so my passion was to get back to business owners. And I knew that this product would do that. It would give them their ability to have their own personalized marketing tool. And that's in fact what it does. That's what it serves as.
So I have to tell the listeners, the first time I met Ken Coleman, I was with you at a cafe in Clayton, Missouri. Your son-in-law, who's a friend of mine, you and he went outside to demo this sign for me. I was super impressed, but what was hilarious, it couldn't have been any better. It was really cold out there. And, Ken takes this sign and he pounds it into the ground, and it's really impressive, very sturdy. It could stand up to incredible amounts of wind. What's the maximum wind?
It's been wind tested at 85 mile an hour winds.
85 miles per hour. Keep in mind, listeners, that this is like, a relatively small sign. For it to be able to stand up to 85 mile per hour winds is amazing. So you're testing it, and all of a sudden the owner of the cafe walks out. He's like, "Hey, what's that?" And the guy, I swear, you guys cut a deal right in front of me. It was pretty suave, Ken. It was pretty, I thought you staged this. You just wanted me to be impressed.
I impressed.
How much did you pay that man to do that for me?
The beauty is he bought signs from us, which
he did.
Really great. He owns 3 restaurants in St. Louis, and the sign does for him exactly what we set out to do. It empowers him to be able to take control of his own marketing.
Yeah. Now you're putting some Internet of Things technology in these signs as well?
That's correct. That's right. Good memory. Yes.
Yeah.
We have new beacon technology, which we call Gorilla Tech. Beacon technology has been out for about 7 years, but really, bottom line, when you drive or walk by one of our signs, it sends a message to your cell phone, and you can actually see what the message is. Digital. It could be a video. It
could be a coupon.
Yeah, it could be anything.
That's amazing.
It takes signs to that next generation, which a 12-year-old boy was listening. So.
I love that. Again, it's the same 12-year-old boy who is destined to become a realtor. This is the thing that gets me. We tend to glorify certain professions, and then there are these other professions that no one would ever say they want to become, but those who take the time to do it and embrace it and, embrace their passion for it, it's beneficial for them, and it's beneficial for the rest of us that
Absolutely.
They do that.
Well, for me, it was more a passion to want to have an item that I thought would make a difference. It would be able to use my God-given talents, ability to communicate with other people, to motivate other people and help them to own their own business. So we set up distributorships and representatives across the United States with these signs, and it's been a phenomenal product and a great opportunity for people to make money. So that's been a blessing for me, no doubt.
So when we talk to our kids, do you think that we tend to pigeonhole them in certain professions that are these?
Absolutely, I think we do. I got up in front of 100 college students the other day who were getting ready to graduate, and I was asked to come and speak to them about real estate, about how to do real estate. And so ironically, I don't know that I ever really hardly even mentioned real estate. The question that I asked them was, how many of you believe that you were born with God-given talents? Raise your hands. And they all raised their hands, which was interesting. But later in the conversation, I asked how many of them believed in God, and only 1 in 3 raised their hands. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Yeah. Anybody that's ever been to college kind of understands why. I mean, it's not politically correct to say that, I believe in God, even though I think most of them in the room did. The point was that I believe that you have to know what your God-given talents are. And I think the earlier the age is that you can actually get your children to be in tune to what their God-given talents are is immeasurable. I think that is what we missed the mark. And
it's a daunting task, because I definitely don't want to pigeonhole my own children.
Sure.
Because what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
It's just like, well, obviously, this little guy is going to be a golf champion and she's going to be a master accountant, and, really deep down she hates accounting and he doesn't have a good swing. How would you identify?
Boy, I appreciate that question. For years, I thought it was a talent. I misunderstood that. So I went and read and studied. In fact, here in St. Louis, I came up to visit my daughter one time and stayed for a couple of weeks. And I literally lived at Barnes & Noble. Checked one book out after another that I could find about God.
Oh, you're checking books out from Barnes & Noble?
Yes, going over and sitting down and having coffee and reading them. So,
one of those guys,
check in, But the thing that I found that was interesting was that most people, according to what I read, are born with 2 basic God-given talents. And God-given talents are never talents in the form of some career. What God-given talents are is the talents that allows you to give back to society. That's all they are. And so they can be used in many careers. So when I say to get your kids to discover their God-given talents, it's something they have to figure out. You can't figure it out for them as a parent. That's the worst thing you could do, is to try to tell them what their God-given talents is or inform them. There's only one way you can really connect with God, is you have to connect with God and ask that question and be able to get that answer back from Him directly. And you have to pray for it and ask for it and search for it. It's a soul-searching thing you have to do. And with all these people that retired to Branson, interesting statistic, I asked this question for years. I would look them right in the eye at some point after they bought their property. I'd usually be sitting on the back porch having a glass of tea or lemonade, and I would ask them, what do you believe your God-given talents are? And it was amazing to me. I got the deer in the headlight look most of the time. In fact, I would say only about 1 in 30 or 1 in 40 actually could give you that answer. And then we're talking people at the last stages of their life. Didn't know by definition, what their God-given talents were. And I thought, wow, that seems sad. You know who those people always were?
Who? The
ones that woke up in the morning with huge passion and could not wait to live life.
So you think that if they were able to identify these gifts, that we'd all be the better for it?
I think so. I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's a great gift that arguably that we got at the time that we were born, that's unique to us, like a thumbprint or a DNA. And if we can discover what that is, and if we were to be extremely thankful for it throughout our life, and we could actually relay that in our prayers, in our own minds, that, gee, not only am I thankful that I've been given this specific talents, that how can I best serve by using them? And if that becomes a part of our prayer, wouldn't that be potentially a better way to find the answer to what's my purpose? What's my reason?
Then based on your theory, I would make a suggestion. The suggestion is your kids are going to discover in the course of life what those gifts are, the things that they are naturally inclined to do, whether it's God-given, whether it's DNA, whatever you call it, they are going to discover that. One of the ways to facilitate that then is to ask them what brings them joy, and ask them maybe what are the things when you do for other people, the types of service that make you truly happy. I know, for example, I look at my kids and I'm getting a sense for what types of service, what acts of love make them really feel fulfilled. I don't know if I've kind of looked into that enough, but I like where you're getting at.
From the time that I've met you and the short time that we've got to know each other, I have no doubt you're above average. In fact, I put you at the very top of the food chain when it comes to being a parent, and I applaud you for that. If we challenge our kids and try to encourage them to understand themselves, it's not necessarily about sporting events or talents as far as being competitive. It's more about getting out there and interlocking with people and interacting with people. And I remember my mother at Christmas time. She recently passed away. God bless her soul. Terrific lady, great influence on me. But every Christmas, it was mandatory that we had to take some of our toys and we would go shop for toys and we would pick family in the community and we would go and we'd give to that family and participate in other families' lives. That was just a prerequisite. That was Christmas. And I remember how much that meant to me. Now, uniquely, I've discovered in the writing of the 2 books that I'm finishing up right now, that was a big influence on my life, without a doubt. It actually brought out something in me that made me realize that was one of my passions. And I had this ability when I would go with my parents, even though I was the youngest in the family. Guess who was the spokesperson in the family for the whole family?
Huh.
Me.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. And
so that was
one of my God-given talents.
How many siblings did you have?
2 older brothers. They were 6
That's surprising that you were able to kind of best them.
Well,
like, what was that like? Did they take to that? What do you mean you were the spokesperson? I'm just very interested in this.
I was the one that...
Because I'll tell you, my siblings, I didn't stand a chance against them. I'm the youngest of 10, and I'm just like, in the company of any one of them, they could all tell me what to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter which sibling. And so you have 2 older brothers, like... I'm a little bit disingenuous, Ken.
I have my oldest brother who's a professor in Wichita, Kansas. He very accomplished and has his doctorate degree, and he's a great communicator, artist. He's been a cartoonist for a number of years too, but
cool.
Very accomplished. Then my next older brother, who lives in Springfield, Missouri, who has been the ghostwriter of both one of the books. He has a marketing degree, and he took 11th in the nation in debate, so he was quite a communicator. So for me to make that statement, I realize it's a really bold statement to make.
Yeah.
Let me preface that by saying this. When I shined around them was when I was discussion compassion. Anytime it involved compassion of other people, I shined because I listened. I was way better at listening. So I learned that one of the most powerful parts of communication is listening.
That's terrific. Speaking of marketing, you put a lot of emphasis on word of mouth marketing.
Oh, absolutely.
It forms the core of your business philosophy.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Where does it come? Maybe if you know where it originates.
Best interview I've ever done, and I've got to do a few of them here lately, so I applaud you because you're asking great questions. There's a saying in marketing that the strongest marketing in the face of the earth is always word of mouth marketing, and that probably will never change. It's the nature of.
That's gutsy, Ken. We got Twitter.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's called credibility. Marketing without credibility is weak at best. I mean, you get it out there in numbers. In the marketing world today, I spoke to 200 marketing people in Dallas, Texas here that I was asked to speak, and I got up in front of them and I said, how many of you in this room believe that you're probably the best marketing guys in all of this market is in Dallas, Texas? And they raised their hands. And I said, okay. I said, I'm here to tell you that you're not. And they looked at me kind of funny. You can imagine some of them even kind of adjusted themselves in their chairs like, excuse me. And I said, well, in my thought process, now I said, I'm just an old dumb hillbilly from Southwest Missouri. I said, although I've raised 6 kids and most of them with a marketing degree, my philosophy is this. I said, well, the best analogy I can give you is when I went to go visit my son one day. He was one of the heads of marketing for Dell Computers in Austin, Texas. And as I went down to see him for the first time, I said, Patrick, there's a huge building right there that's Dell. I said, who's in that building there? And he said, oh, that's the marketing department for Dell. There's 30,000 people in that building. And I said, are you kidding me? It takes 30,000 people to market one brand? And he said, Dad, that's one of the biggest brands in the world. And I said, okay. And so
we're looking down at my Dell computer right here. It's like, hey, they're not doing too bad. I have a Dell.
They do well. So I said, okay, that's great. I said, what's in the building next door to it? There's this huge parking lot in between. There's a matching building. And he goes, oh, that building over there, that's sales. And I said, and he goes, I know, Dad, I know what you're thinking. And I said, well, I mean, I'm a little confused. He goes, well, that's just how corporate America looks at marketing. And I said, well, they're both one and the same, Patrick. How can you separate marketing and sales? We're in the people business. We're not in the computer business. How could you make sales if you don't understand the people? And how can marketing do marketing with understanding the people? And if they don't communicate with each other, then how can they do it effectively? And he said, Dad, you need to be out lecturing about marketing. And I said, well, it's just a passion that I have. It's an understanding that I have about people. And I think you're right. It's something that I learned at a young age, that we have to be good listeners and we have to be able to communicate to each other. The people. So when I told the marketing people in the room of this meeting, I said that the best marketing people in town are the business owners. They're the ones that bleed from the knees. They're the ones that's actually out there every day talking to the people. And they're the ones that communicate. They know their customer better than anybody. So I say that you guys are coaches at best. And I said, when people show up to watch a ball game, they don't come to watch the coaches. They come to watch the players. I said, so for those of you in the room that think you're the best marketing people in the room, you've lost sight of what your job and your task is. I said, your task is to be a good coach and know your players because that's your stars. And I could see that it was an eye-opener for a lot of them in the room, and they crowded around me afterwards. But, for me, it's
crowded around you, like gave you a good beating, crowded around you. Like,
they wanted more. They wanted more.
I don't want my worldview changed.
There was a few of them that walked out the door immediately.
Comfort me.
So, it's a different philosophy, but I do believe, though, that word of mouth is the strongest marketing tool and always will be, because 93 to 95% of all sales that happen in the United States of any kind of product, even though they'll say it's social media, it's not. It's referrals.
Yeah.
It's always referrals.
No, I firmly believe that. I agree with you entirely because I look at my day-to-day, what I buy and what I do on a day-to-day business has very much to who recommended that to me.
Yes.
So I can accept that. What then with marketing? Does it have a role? I'm talking about marketing on a corporate level, the Cheerios commercials on the television. What kind of a role do you think that does play? Given that you even sell signage,
marketing is such a broad, there's 14 areas of industry in the United States today, and a lot of people aren't conscious of this, so this is probably a good point to make. Well, someone asked me one time, what is the richest industry in the United States today? And I said, well, it's got to be medical. And they said, no, it's not. And I said, well, then it's got to be technology. And they said, no, it's not. And I said, well, if it's not those two, what could it be? And the reality is it's marketing. Marketing is more dollar. If you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Everything has to have marketing by its nature. So with that said, it's a very broad stroke. It takes in a lot of things to consider what's the secrets to marketing. But I think it always goes back to being a good listener, listening to what people want, knowing your market, target your market, be able to define your market, know who that is. I sat down with some people the other day and they own a big printing store in Kansas City. And they wanted some advice on marketing. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, you guys have how many customers on a regular basis yearly that comes through your store? And they said, roughly 1,000. And I said, okay, of the 1,000 people that come in your store, what percentage of them make up about 66% of your business? And they had to stop and think about it for quite a bit. It was a husband and wife. And finally, the wife who wrote all the checks, she looked over at me. She said, well, now that you mention it again, she goes, I really wasn't that conscious of it. She says, it's about 7 customers. I said, now, isn't that interesting? What you just told me was that 7 personalities make up 66% of your volume. I said, now let me just give you a hypothetical. And let's maybe look at life a little differently. And she said, okay. I said, let's just say that you're one of those 7 people and you walk into the store to do business. And one of the other kind of clients are standing there arguing over the simplest of things. Is it possible you might lose that one and that's very valuable to you because you cater to the other group? I said, here's my belief system. And this could get kind of deep and take quite some time, but
I don't mind. This is wonderful.
I believe that in our DNA, we're either born 5%ers or born 50%ers. And what I mean by that, by definition, is that we're either born as risk takers or we're born conservative. Literally born that way. It's an important thing to understand about our children because we're not that conscious of it. But if we were conscious of it, we might approach the raising of our children different. So ask yourself, is this kid more of a risk taker? Are they by nature, do they think, well, I can pretty much do anything, can't I? They have this mentality of, I can do it. And then there's the kid that goes, well, wait a minute, the glass is half empty. It's the glass half empty, glass half full scenario. I believe we're born with that. I don't believe it's something you learn. I also believe that you're born with this DNA that says you're either 5%er or you're 50%.
That being said, if you don't have kind of this just charisma with which, that you're born with, what then, and you and I have talked a little bit about this. I'm not sure if I totally agree, but I'm not sure if I've studied this particular subject as much. I tend to think that the brain is very plastic, malleable, that there are dramatic changes that we can make even later on in life. That being said, let's say that you're right. I'm a parent and I've got a 5%er child who's very charismatic and I can see it. I can see their risk taking but we can hone it and make sure that it's healthy. And then I see my other kid who's just want to go with the crowd. Is there something I can do for that second child?
Well, let me say this, and I think this is important, a good important point. I appreciate you bringing this up. I don't believe that the 5%er is more prone to be successful in life. Let's decide what success is.
Yeah.
Is success making money?
I would define success as being a happy and loving human being.
There you go. I couldn't agree with you more. And so I guess the question is then how do you obtain that? I think you need to first discover who you are. To find happiness, you gotta be true to who you are. Make sense?
Yeah,
if I'm born with a handicap, that's part of who I am.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And you come to terms with it. You understand what, its limitations and its strengths.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that never changes. I think that if in fact what my theory is that you're born, and I got to tell you where that comes from. I did do a lot of homework research on this, but literally selling $1.4 billion worth of real estate and analyzing people to do that over and over and over again, I saw patterns. And it became where I could size you up so fast and I could know what direction to help you. Not to sell you, but to literally help you. I could actually know what direction, like a psychologist.
I appreciate that perspective on that, because I'm also one of those types of people who really looks at a person, hones in on kind of what appeals to them and what doesn't appeal to them. And I don't want to manipulate a single person. Do you find that that's a temptation for you?
There's been some times, I would be dishonest if I didn't say there hasn't been times in my life where I needed to put food on the table for my family that I didn't have a tendency to want to lean that way. But I would have to slap myself literally and say, whoa, wait a minute. I remember one time I had 6 contracts pending during the Jimmy Carter days. And I never will forget it. I just came out of the bathroom getting ready to go to work. And I looked at my wife and I said, I'm getting out of real estate. And she just looked at me with, like, are you kidding me? And I said, no, I am. I'm getting out of real estate. And I said, in fact, I have 6 contracts pending right now. I need to call those people up and tell them I don't think they should do it. And of course, you can imagine my wife, who's pregnant with our first child, she looked at me like I'd lost my noodles. And I said, no, I didn't get into real estate for this reason. I've convinced people to buy houses because houses go up in value, even though the interest rates are high. But as I've really thought about it using my professional knowledge, I don't think it's a good time to buy real estate. And I don't recommend they buy them. And I said, I don't feel good about it, so I can't do it anymore. And I'm going to have to do something different. And I did for a period of time. I went and found restaurant locations for a big, large restaurant chain, and I still did real estate. I just did it in a different capacity.
Gotcha.
But I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but
no, there's that temptation there. And
yes, we have to be careful about our God-given talent.
I've seen children who are very adept at manipulation. And it's fascinating. And I kind of want to hone that, because one thing I read in a book that touched me is that some of the things that we look at in our children, some of the things that frighten us, what we perceive to be a weakness or an annoyance, we have to look at it, well, how can this also be a strength?
Absolutely.
And persuasion, when I see that in kids, I think, oh, well, this can also be a very wonderful thing.
It can be.
As a parent, perhaps you just have to have the right perspective about what that characteristic can mean for your child later on.
I think, absolutely. I think it's the principles that child is raised with. What do they worship? Do they worship mom and dad? Do they worship, what is it in their life that they look up to and aspire to be and to have? And I think that's really what it comes down to. If they use those talents in the wrong way, then watch out. There's some bad things going to happen. When I was 6 years old, my mother tells a story of I came home from the next door neighbor's house with a box of toys, and they were my toys. And so my mother asked me where I got them, and I said I traded them for the little boy next door with some of my toys. And my mother said, so she called the mother up over there, and come to find out, I traded up. I definitely got the better toys. And I'm 6 years old. I don't remember doing it, but my mother said that you came by that naturally. And I thought, interesting. And that's those stories that I've listened to. I thought, isn't it interesting? I just naturally was doing that. I just willed what I wanted to happen, and I was better at willing it than the other child. And so I manipulated, obviously, and got what I wanted. Of course, if the toys were taken back and my toys were returned, and my mother had a long conversation with me about it. But yeah, I think you have to be careful and watch for those things, because there's signs that are there. Have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule in business?
I know the 80-20 rule in business, and I will articulate it for the benefit of listeners, because
Sure.
I know that you've got your own. And that is that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your work.
When I refer to the 5% rule, I'm referring to choices that people make in life, not levels of success. Let me preempt that in saying that what I'm talking about is how we make choices as human beings. I remember I went to a class retreat in high school, and I went down to Panama Beach with all the high school kids. And there was a big crane swung out over the Gulf, and it was early days of bungee jumping. And so there was a big group of guys. There was about 20 of us. And we all ran down the beach to go bungee jump. We thought, yeah, let's do it. But none of us had done it before. And I just sat down in the sand, started playing in the sand, watching the guys. And because I realized when I looked back, there was a certain self-confidence that I had that I knew already what was going to play out. Well, they all talked about it and everything. They heard about what it would take to do it. And finally, sure enough, here it comes. Ken, where's Ken? Ken will do it first.
Yeah.
Ken will take that risk. They all knew that. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the smarter position to be in. I'm not even saying that it's the best position to be in.
Yeah, there are many risks that young men will see that you will take first that you probably should not take.
I luckily lived through it. I took a lot of risk in life that I should not have, but I did because it was who I was. I literally was in every fiber of who I was, and to be true to who I was. Now there's another factor. My father was also a risk taker, major risk taker. He was one of the primary engineers on the Learjet, and he took
the which jet?
The Learjet.
Learjet, yeah.
I come from a family of risk takers, and I do believe that if you're born a 5%er and you're raised by a 5%er, in other words, the heavy influence in your life is a 5%er by their nature, then you're going to end up being a 5%er whether you want to be or not, and because it's just the role model in your life. But now, on the other hand, let's say that you're raised by a 50%er, which the odds are you're going to be. There's far more people born 50%, and thank God for his wisdom to not have too many people that are 5%ers, because this would be a dangerous world. But the point is that if you're influenced by the 50%er growing up, I think you become more towards what I call a 15%er. Still a 5%er in heart, but I've been so influenced by a conservative-minded person that I actually stop and think about things before I act. Does that make sense?
It does.
So the same principle works in reverse. If I'm born a 50%er and I'm heavily influenced by a 5%er, then I'm more prone to become what I call a 30%er. And that 30%er is one who understands the life of a 5%er. But they're not one.
Yeah.
Nor are they ever going to be.
Yeah.
But they understand them. I think they often become the CEOs of the world.
Yeah.
Because they understand that guy who took the risk and started the business, the Steve Jobs.
But they don't have that same inclination to be as risky. They want to kind of hold steady, hold the line, make the ship go forward.
Absolutely.
Any last words of encouragement for parents?
Because we're in a society of so much knowledge at our fingertips, there's no good excuse for not having good answers and finding good direction. I mean, I like to Google almost anything today, if they just ask. I'm amazed at how many families don't. And I have grandkids, and I'm constantly observing, and I try not to speak up too much and influence the raising of those grandkids. But sometimes I can't help but share it in private with my child. And fortunately, they're all raised to take constructive thought, and they know that it's just my thought. But I would say this. One of the most untapped resources in our country today is people over the age of 65. They have been set aside. They have been ignored. They have not been included into the lives of our family. And we have had a tendency to shove them aside. And that's sad, because the greatest knowledge on the face of the earth today is wisdom. And wisdom is great knowledge and help for raising children. So if you don't include your grandparents into the lives of your children, and maybe it doesn't always work that way, but I would certainly encourage it, because that wisdom, those kids can't benefit enough. And we've grown away from that in the United States. But so my words of encouragement is the answers are there. Just embrace them and be open-minded to the idea that there's other people who love your children more than you know, that would love to leave a legacy of something in them. So they have more time to focus. They've had a lot more time to think about things, and they've made a lot of mistakes. They've made mistakes with their own kids. They've learned. All great people became great because of mistakes.
Very true. Can you name a charitable cause that has come to mean a lot to you?
Anything that has to do with children. The very first non-for-profit event that I really got involved with was muscular dystrophy. And I showed up because it was a business thing. I mean, really and truly, to be honest about it. And I was 19 years old, and I just got into real estate, and it was a bed race to push medical beds as to raise money. Whoever could push the beds the fastest across the parking lot. It was a crazy thing. And
I am not familiar with this type of an event.
It was pretty silly. But it drew a lot of people in the major mall parking lot in Springfield, Missouri. But at the end of that event, I realized how good it made me feel again. It brought back those memories as a child. So for me, it's children. They need help, and parents need help. And so if you help the children, you're helping the parents. And so it helps society as a whole. I think it's where we need to focus, and I would challenge people out there to become more in tune to that.
I've noticed that on your signs, you've built in a way to include nonprofits in your advertising. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was a kind of a God thing. It wasn't kind of a God thing. It was a God thing. It was to give back to charities. And so I thought, well, how do I do that with the signs? And it's interesting. It's became the number one marketing tool for us to market the signs. We actually donate the use of the signs to pretty much any charity in any market across the United States. Now, that's not easy to do when you're a startup company and you don't have this enormous budget. But we're able to do that because we've learned that there's a tremendous amount of companies out there that already give to charity. And there's a whole lot of people that want to. And so they like to get their name seen. But what the signs do for the charity itself is it raises more money. Because the more awareness there is at the event from the corporations, the more money they give to that event. It's funny how that works, but it's just being in tune to what the needs and wants are of people so that you can actually highlight the areas that matter. For charities, guess what the second largest industry is in the United States today? It's not medical, and it's not, well, it is indirectly medical, but it's not technology. It's non-for-profits. Not-for-profits is the second largest industry in the United States today.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, I don't know if you could say that of another country. I've traveled the world and I don't feel like I've seen the presence of not-for-profits quite as strongly. And maybe that depends on where you've traveled. There are areas of the world where I still haven't been to, but you definitely don't notice it as much in some of the places.
They say there's as much money spent by American people and corporations on charities as the rest of the world combined. Now think about that. It's a staggering number.
Wow.
So Americans are very,
and it's our second largest.
Yeah, and I have a theory on that. It goes back to the 5%er deal. I'll share it with you real quick. When people came from Europe over here years ago, guess who I think fled from Europe? 5%ers in huge numbers. A high percentage of 5%.
Risk takers, basically.
Sure. I mean, who's going to get on a boat and go across the ocean to a place they've never seen?
I get seasick.
Yeah. I mean,
I've been lulled away. I would hope that during that day I would have the guts, but I've been on a sailboat. It was miserable before it was fun. And when it was fun, it was really fun, but when it was miserable, it was truly, yeah.
Yeah, it takes some interesting people. So I think that we do live in the greatest country in the world. We have our shortcomings, no doubt. We have areas that we need to improve, but I'm very proud of the fact that we take an active role in giving.
Ken Coleman, it has been a real pleasure talking with you.
Hey, this has been a treat for me, and I'm very appreciative of your good questions.
Oh, not a problem. And so thank you so much for being on the show, and wish you a wonderful day and year.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Everybody else, thank you for listening. We hoped you enjoyed the interview and found useful ideas about things you can do with your kids. Be sure to check the show notes at www.choosethenickel.com for links to names, books, and other resources we discussed in today's show. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter and visit our contact page where you can give us feedback. We invite you to share Choose the Nickel with your friends and join us in our quest to give kids financial freedom.